It's not everyone's cup of tea to consume an entire podcast. That's why, welcome to the Ranveer Show's highlights channel, TRS Clips. Subscribe and hit that bell icon. But in saying all this, I also want to highlight some of the negatives because this is season 2 of the Ranveer Show. So we do it from a 360-degree perspective. So, I feel kind of one thing I've learned about looking at countries from a macro lens is that you got to perceive it like a business. You have things that are going right. You can be optimistic, but you've also got to focus on what the holes within the boat are. What are the holes that are supposed to be plugged? What can possibly go wrong? So again, from the finance lens, what do you think are the problems that we're facing? And what do we need to fix?
If I have to put them in like a couple of broad categories, let's do like 3 or 4. I would say inflation, unemployment, fiscal deficit. Yeah, I think these 3 are like probably, in my view, big problems of today. Inflation, people often don't realize. I was reading this book by Milton Friedman a few days ago. Very creative, colorful character, right? He was an economist who kind of championed in a certain way the laissez-faire form of governance where less involvement is better than more involvement and stuff like that. But he talks about inflation as a tax. When your purchasing power goes down. Officially, we think inflation in India is 6%, between 5 to 6%. Pragmatically, living on the ground in India, it feels like a lot more. Steel, copper, crude, all these commodities have rallied by 50, 100%, taking up the cost of, goods being produced in the country, and many, many other things are, so much more expensive than they were 3, 4 years ago. So inflation, like even if you look at housing price inflation, I think that alone is significantly higher than that 5, 6% number that we keep hearing. But if you were to consider inflation at say 10%, for example, you have to think that your purchasing power in the country is going down by 10%. Like if Ranveer has 10 lakh rupees in his bank account this year, he can buy maybe a car which costs 10 lakhs, but next year that same car costs 11 lakhs and you can't afford it with that same 10 lakh rupees. If you put your money in a bank FD in India today, you get 4.5% pre-tax. Net of taxes, you probably make like 3%. With inflation being so much higher than 3%, people are effectively losing their purchasing power every year that money remains parked in their bank accounts. I think this will have many repercussions in the future. Once it kind of blows out of proportion and it becomes uncontrolled and it's rising quickly, the government will have to quickly move interest rates above the inflation rates. So let's assume inflation goes to 10, interest rates will have to become 12. We've been in this easy money scenario for a few years now, and so much borrowing has happened towards capex and other activity that it will become increasingly hard for these people who have borrowed to service that debt. But B, companies will then, find it very hard to go out and borrow at 15, 20% to grow their businesses and kind of have any kind of capex activity. So inflation is a big headwind, in my opinion. We've kind of I think we've spoken about the problem, but we have not really given it the amount of attention it is due for as big a problem as it is.
How does one tackle that? I mean, obviously one can't, but I'm speaking as, for the government. See, what does the finance ministry do about that issue going forward?
Well, honestly, a lot of the inflation issues across the world have been percolating down from the Federal Reserve printing money in America. So not like we have much control. If you go back to economic theory, there's a guy called John Maynard Keynes. He had the Keynesian model. If you were to take two contrasting viewpoints, right? Keynes believed in when things are not going well, throw money, helicopter money, pump so much money in the economy, increase consumption. That in turn will lead to growth in one way or the other. There was another guy, Friedrich Hayek, on the other side. Hayek always, was more err on the side of caution, the complete opposite of what Keynes was saying in a certain way. The world largely, the capitalistic world largely, or the democratic world largely, has followed the Keynesian model. And I don't know if there's a solution for it. I think, to make the cost of capital higher and to reduce liquidity from the ecosystem is probably the only prudent way to make sure it's in check. Like, otherwise, we'll go like the way of Turkey or something. I don't know if you've been watching what's been happening with Turkey, but it's like batshit crazy, right? Like, Erdogan does not believe in increasing interest rates, immaterial of where inflation is at. So, inflation could be well at 20, 30, 40%, but he still wants to lend money to people at nominal rates, like one-fifth of that. So inflation continues to go up. Their currency has deflated by 70%, 60, 70%, and it's total chaos, right? Like, I don't think we can go in that direction. I think the reasonable world that we live in, India, the only tool they will really have is raising interest rates and reducing liquidity when inflation goes up. And I think we will see a cycle of that in the near future.